Today we're going to do Yang Ming. I reckon we'll get through Xiaoyang as well. I'm planning to, so we'll rock on. By this week 4, it'll be more practical. So we're going to be more theoretical into more practical. So building until, so you'll have all the foundations by week 4 to just really dive in, and then we'll build on the Jingui, so you'll have more of the internal conditions. And anyway, we're going to repeat formulas over and over, and so you're really, really clear about it all. Sorry, from last week. So just quickly going over again, Ma Huang Tong again, it's not used much on its own, but it's a very important basis for cough and asthma formulas. Why? Because it's got Ma Huang and Xing Ren. So the Ma Huang and the Xing Ren, remember, is to open the lungs and to open the pores. But to open the pores, to have a sweat, you need Ma Huang and Guijia together, actually. So the Ma Huang doesn't make you sweat on its own. It's the Guijia that will warm the Taiyang blood and then helps the Ma Huang to give you a sweat. So therefore, if you've only actually got Ma Huang and Xing Ren in a formula, it's just for panting. It treats panting. So that opens the lung. It doesn't necessarily open the pores, but it opens the lung in terms of the pores. So that actually could make it, you could say technically they're tie-in formulas because they're opening the lung tie-in. That's Ma Huang and Xing Ren, right? So your true Taiyang herb is Guijia. Guijia is your thread all the way through Taiyang. So if you're treating Taiyang, you've got aversion to cold, you may have joint pain, you may have a stiff neck, and Guijia is the common thread herb through all those formulas. Guijia Tang again, so Ma Huang Tang is the person that was probably a little bit robust. The wind came, shut their pores, and they can't sweat, and the cold is in their body and frozen shut. So the Ma Huang Tang will open the pores and produce a sweat to help the pathogen open through the door. So we're looking at exits through the body. So Taiyang, we'll talk about this clearly in a minute, but just very briefly, Taiyang is still close to the exit. So you get Taiyang and you can treat it early, you can get rid of it quickly. Then as it goes deeper into Yang Ming, it's a little bit deeper into the body, and then you can still get rid of it. And then Xiaoyang we'll talk about after the break, that a lot of chronic problems that come into your clinic will be Xiaoyang. You know, I've had this thing ever since I went to Bali and I ate a bad nasi goreng and then I got really sick, and now I just get sick all the time. Every time I get the flu like 6 times a year, it's going to be Xiaoyang. I can almost guarantee it's going to be a Xiaoyang thing. You're going to have to harmonize that person. What I mean by harmonize, we'll talk about that after the break, but basically it's going to be a Huangqin formula. Yeah. So Guijia Tang means that they're already blood deficient. Their yang has been depleted so much from being out in the elements, all this kind of thing, and they need warming and they need blood tonification. So Guijia Tang again, Guijia, Baixia, Daza, Shenjiang, Ganqiao. Lots of sweet, soupy things to tonify the blood, and then the Guijia can create a little bit of a sweat too. But the Guijia and the Baixia 9:9 ratio is going to be 1:1 ratio, which means you're controlling sweat. You're not necessarily trying to produce a sweat. But if they're sick, they will have a natural sweat. Wuling San again, like only 3 grams of Guijia, right? So before, if you want to tonify the heart, Guijia at 12 grams. If you want to regulate the sweat and warm the blood, Guijia at 9 grams. If you want to just warm the bladder, because remember in Wuling San situation, the person, they were a Guijia Tang person, they easily sweat. The yang went out to the surface to make them sweat. The yang left the interior, cooled off the bladder shut down. You just want to warm the bladder a little bit. Just a little bit, 3 grams. That's why it's really, really low. You don't want to heat up the bladder because the UTI might get worse. So you just need to warm the bladder channel, warm the bladder organ, just a little bit, 3 grams, and then the rest is a diuretic, just flush out the bladder. Okay? So then I mentioned that before, it's very early days UTI, caught a cold, got a fever, aversion to cold, floating pulse, and then bladder shuts off, and then turbid urine starts to produce if they don't get Wuling San. Chiling Tang is a very common one used in Japan. It's a common one that I use as well. Patient usually comes in. It's typically older ladies that get UTIs all their life. They all